So Mahua, what you're saying is that after all these presentations, I'd be delighted to hear what you have to share with all of us today. So we start with handing over the floor to you, your experiences and the areas. And I can only emphasize once again, just keep the time in mind. The essentials would be delightful. We'd be delighted to hear. And
Sure. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for Dr. Khosla for having me at this event. I was listening to all the presentations, and just as I was getting ready for my session, I have the power failure. Just to explain what let me give this a little bit of context. To introduce myself, I've spent the last 20 years working on different aspects of climate change with a heavy focus most recently on finance, meaning using the tools of finance to achieve the goals of, I guess, environmental goals, collective goals, so the goals of public policy. And what I mean by that is using the mechanics, the risk allocation, the instruments and structures that regular mainstream commercial finance has to offer to bring environmental services for large, I guess, communities. 8 months ago, I was asked to build out this new Government of India company, which I've been doing. It's in fact a Government of India company positioned as finding large, of course, everything in India just has to be large scale, focusing on energy transition. So all of the climate change realities and all of the slide decks that I saw before this around climate and the science of climate and the effects, the issue is, I mean, we all know we've got to respond to them, but in order to get large scale capital, business models just have to allow that. So here's an opportunity that that has been given, and in fact has even been created by the government, to combine, wherever possible, state money with commercial capital, with appropriate risk mitigation mechanisms, with as many structures as is possible, such as the monetizing of carbon credits, such as the monetizing of air quality. We talk about air quality and the need for it, but in fact, when we end up doing projects or large programs, we don't seem to monitor, we don't even seem to measure them, let alone monetize them. So here's an opportunity where I'd like to put all of this together. So this work that I've been focused on in this new company is on distributed generation or distributed renewables, meaning renewable energy that's not your typical large scale power plants where you see solar farms going extensively out into, I guess, into the wild. These are smaller units that provide cheap power, very cheap, high quality, and accessible power to rural communities, but doing that at scale. So to put it in perspective, this is 1.2 gigawatts, and you can, it's almost, it's in rupee terms, it's 4 crores, almost a little less than $1 million per megawatt. So it's a very large scale investment, but in fact, every project is small. It feeds rural areas, it feeds agricultural consumers, and it adds to greening future demand. So here's an opportunity to achieve impact, but also at scale. Electric mobility is the other big focus area. It's something that I guess the world is moving towards. We have never been able to address transportation emissions. The carbon market came and it's now fragmented into many bits, but it's been hugely difficult to incentivize transportation, at least monetarily incentivize a change in public transit. But here's an opportunity. We finally have enough technology out there and enough enthusiasm in the market to pull that together again at scale. So that's what I've been focused on. And somewhere in there is technology, because that's our enabler. To get to the masses, what I just need is this little phone. And that's what everybody else needs. So if we can get these 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers and a bus ride accessible through phone, because everybody's using a phone to do just about everything. I mean, to make payments. So we've enabled that. So somewhere in there is technology. So again, going back to all of the slides and all of the, I'd say the theory, there's a lot of that theory that's, I can see is being applied, can be applied, but sadly not all of it. Not everything. I wish things could be quantified a little bit more. We have in government the concept of an economic rate of return. And that's what's used, and not just necessarily an investment rate of return. I wish we could build that up a little bit more. An economic rate of return captures things like value of life. It captures livelihood generation. We do projects all over the world based on livelihood generation, and it is, after all, some aspect the public sector responsibility, quote unquote. So this is what I've been doing here. This is what I do right now, and the mandate is international. But very honestly, the scale in India is so large that if I had more than 10 working hours a day, I would be able to do a lot more because the demand is tremendous, tremendous. The demand across the states is absolutely tremendous. From anything palm oil restoration to mining runoff restoration to come and fix my public transportation problems.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Mahua. Thank you for sharing this. I would say this really noble initiative that is started by the government. And as you said, the bandwidth is extremely large. I'm sure we'll see more of this, and we wish you luck with the new organization. And we, of course, look forward to the impact that it's going to create in our systems. Thank you very much. May I now, yeah, thanks. And may I now next request Dr. Praveer Sinha, the CEO and MD of Tata Power. May I also draw your attention to what Mr. Ramadharai said. I think the Tata Group has been in the forefront in taking initiatives which are ensuring that we do look towards meaningful actions for reduction of emissions. Dr. Praveer Sinha has three decades of experience in the power sector, from power distribution, a master's degree from the National Law School in Bangalore. He's on the faculty of a large amount of institutions, and has also, before his present assignment, was looking after the CEO and Managing Director of Tata Power Delhi Distribution. Without much ado, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. General Sahni, and thank you to Mr. Ashok Khosla for giving me the opportunity. Let me start with Tata Power, more than 100 years old company, started as a hydropower company. And the founder, Jamshedji Tata himself, more than 120 years back, said that clean, green, and affordable energy in abundant quantity. And I think what he said more than 120 years back is so true now also. And so in the same ethos, Tata Power, while had been in conventional generation for many decades, took a stand 2 years back that we will move away from conventional generation and become a net zero company, net zero carbon company in 2050. So, or before 2050, and we are now, of course, looking at a target much before that. This is in spite that the government of India has not taken a stand of when to become, but we thought we need to demonstrate the thought leadership, and no better way than to do an action and walk the talk of what we can do. And I think we are committed to this. Right now, we have 30% of our generation from non-carbon sources, and 2025, we will become 60%, and we will become about 75% by 2030. So very aggressive plans that we have at the utility scale. But I think there are three big areas that we are doing a lot of work. One is towards how to empower the customer. And I'm talking about rooftop solar. How we reach out to people and encourage that they can generate their own electricity and clean energy, use it themselves, and also give it back to the grid or give it in So large number of our programs are going. We are right now in 100 cities and possibly the biggest player in the country in rooftop solar. The second area that we are working very strongly is on solar pumps. India has something like 22 million pumps, out of which 9 million pumps are on diesel. Now, diesel is polluting, as also it is spoiling the land in the villages due to spillage. And that's where, again, we have taken large number of initiatives so that we become the biggest player. Right now, India has just 300,000 of solar pumps and has plans of becoming about 4 million by 2025. We'll, of course, be a very large player, single largest player in this field. The third area that we have taken a huge initiative is in microgrids in villages. This was a program we started a few years back. The Tata Trust supported us. And the objective was that how do we bring clean energy in villages? And when we talk of clean energy in villages, we are talking about 24/7 electricity. Most of the places, the discoms supply electricity, but 24 hours in 7 days, not in 1 day. And that's where we thought that we need to bring certainty in the way this energy has to be brought. And this was a larger program in terms of providing access, universal access of energy, as also providing, working towards removing energy poverty. And we have in India more than 600,000 villages. We have come with the largest microgrid program anywhere in the world to set up 10,000 villages with microgrid. Unfortunately, last 15 months have not been the best period, but notwithstanding that, we've still gone and done about 200 villages, and we expect that once the situation improves, we will ramp it up. And when we talk of microgrids, it's not only the solar plant, the storage that we do, and also in terms of instead of diesel, DG set over there using bio-CNG. And how do we also create the ecosystem for development of micro enterprise? And it's a unique program whereby we create the ecosystem by arranging for the villagers many of the industrial activities that they can carry out, starting from flour mill to oil expellers to various other outlets, consumer outlets that they can have for providing services to the people. And this is expected to bring about the village economy change and also the socio-economic dimensions, especially with the migrant laborers going back to the villages. So it's a great program. Our initial results are very good. We have in a very short period of time, I would say just in 18 months, we have become the biggest players in the microgrid sector in the country with nearly 200 microgrids. But our ambition is, of course, 10,000, and maybe if things work out well, possibly. Now, this is as a commercial organization, our huge step and contribution towards decarbonization, which empower the people. Of course, the challenges are that while there has been a lot of action and about providing concessional financing and green bonds and ESG, nothing has actually translated. So today, all these initiatives, all these programs that we do, commercial rates of lending, whether it is for the SMEs, the rooftop solar and the ground-mounted solar solutions are coming in, or for the villagers, the solar pump, there is, of course, a government subsidy under KUSUM. But there is much more that can be done. And I think it's very important that the policymakers, researchers, all get together and start delivering some of these solutions that they have been discussing about it. Because while there has been a lot of discussion and a lot of papers that have been presented, when it comes to translating them on ground, we are not seeing the type of results. We have on our own spent huge amount of money on R&D for the microgrid business or the solar pump business. How do we make it more efficient? And how do we make it more user-friendly, especially in the rural area? And I'm sure that some of the initiatives that we are taking can become a path breaker in future for many others to follow, and we will be more than happy to support other partners who would be interested in taking up niche activities in these areas. So from Tata Power side, we are committed to this. Along with this, we are also working in areas on demand side. We have huge programs on demand response and demand side management, and wherein we encourage people to go for high efficiency equipments, the home automation solutions, the ESCO services. And of course, now we are the biggest player in the EV charging. So we have the largest number of public charging, about 600 of them. We have 3,000 of home chargers, and we are virtually 50% market shareholder in this business, and it is ramping up at an exponential pace in this year and in future year. So from Tata Power side, as a utility, we strongly believe that the future is for bringing many of these new solutions, clean solutions, and this will, to a large extent, bring a paradigm shift in the way energy can be produced and used. So thank you once again for the opportunity, and if there are any questions, I would be open to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Congratulations to you. And without much ado, may I now invite Mr. Saurav Malhotra, who's joining us from Nepal. I think he's out doing some seminal work in the hills in Eastern Himalayas. He's the co-founder and designer of Balipara Foundation's Rural Futures Framework. Saurav believes in stewardship of indigenous groups, and he's been really implementing a framework for community-led habitat restoration linked to universal basic asset delivery. Saurav, over to you, and glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, General Sahni, Dr. Khosla, Mr. Ramadurai, for having me here. It's a pleasure to speak, and actually I'm quite interested in talking about quite a different pathway towards achieving net zero, and how we look at land use systems, how we look at restoring land use systems to not only benefit global net zero targets, but also benefiting communities whose lives are negatively affected by climate change and its associated challenges. So I'm going to be giving you a small case study of the Eastern Himalayas as a region, and how restoring land use can affect livelihoods in the region and help sequester large-scale carbon. So the Eastern Himalayas really connect two of the world's most populous and bioculturally diverse nations, India and China. This region forms sort of like an ecological bridge between 250 million people from over 400 different indigenous groups. The strategic value of this region really cannot be overstated, from its centrality as a water source for India, China, and for the rest of Southeast Asia, to its importance as a global biodiversity hotspot. This region is endowed with immense natural capital, which unfortunately remains largely untapped and also highly underleveraged, and is viewed as an impediment to the growth of the economy of the region, and as a battleground for increasingly endangered endemic species such as the Asian elephant or the one-horned rhinoceros. In the last 20 years, the Eastern Himalayan region has lost over 10% of its forest cover, which is an area larger than 2 times the Kingdom of Bhutan put together. About 80% of the region is employed directly in agriculture or other forms of livelihoods linked to nature. And long-term ecological degradation has contributed to a severe decline in incomes and a decline in agricultural yields in a region that is primarily agricultural, which has forced people to exploit forests to spur further degradation of the ecology and of critical ecosystems. Today, livelihoods in the region are threatened by this vicious cycle of ecological degradation, leading to shrinking incomes, which lead to further deforestation and degradation of ecosystems. What we are also now beginning to realize is that some of the greatest terrestrial carbon sinks in the world, such as the Amazon rainforest, for example, may also very well be emitting more carbon in totality than sequestering. And which is spurred by deforestation, spurred by increasing forest fires to clear lands to make way for monoculture plantation industries, which don't really benefit the indigenous communities that have guarded these forests for the past many thousands of years, but rather benefit large agricultural corporations. So the goal of the Rural Futures innovation that we've been spearheading for the last 5 years at the Balipara Foundation is to try and create diverse and stable income streams for our rural and indigenous communities, while trying to revive traditional ecological knowledge and enhancing the resilience of communities to climate change by restoring habitats, and through this, helping achieve global goals for net zero through sequestering carbon, and ultimately trying to create a first of its kind system where nature capital is paying for the socioeconomic mobility of indigenous communities. And this process pretty much is autonomously run by communities themselves. So through the Rural Futures innovation, we have impacted communities over about 5,000 hectares of land, secured habitats for migrating Asian elephants and other large mammals, and enabled a process for natural capital-based incomes for over 10,000 individuals in the last 4 years. To make this entire value chain more sustainable, we have focused on building grassroots leadership of communities in managing land, in managing forests, and in being able to sustainably harvest natural resources and manage them in the long term. We are currently in the process of scaling this entire initiative to 100,000 hectares over the next 5 years. And that is the reason why I am in Kathmandu today, to push this initiative in Nepal. And through this, create and seed community-led initiatives for mini natural capital economies across the Eastern Himalayas. Towards this, I think that the support and stewardship of global corporations, of Indian corporations, will be instrumental in this sort of in creating large global scale carbon capture programs through restoration of forests and through conversion of land use from monocrops to other intercropping based systems with higher carbon value, and to try and create for the first time again a system where we show that nature capital is the real engine for the future and will fix the disrupted symbiosis between nature, humans, and economics that we are all trying to battle. And I believe that all of this should function in addition to severe and immediate decarbonizing pathways that will be implemented by large carbon emitters. So not only focusing on decarbonizing your own value chains, but using other systems which make communities more adaptable and more resilient to climate changes, and in this process, sequester carbon as well. Thanks very much.
Saurav, thank you very much. Wish you all the very best for your initiative there in Kathmandu, and I'm sure you will meet with success in your initiatives.
Thank you.
We now come on to the last speaker for today's structured deliberations. And so may I kindly invite Mr. Kutty of Tata Motors Limited. He's the Chief Sustainability Officer. He's done his MBA from Imperial College London. And I think he's an acclaimed teacher in business ethics, business strategy, and employee engagement. Over to you, Mr. Kutty.
Yeah, can you hear me? I hope you're able to hear me.
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arunji, for having me on this call. We've been doing a lot of work in the area of sustainability, especially with reference to climate change. As most of us on this call know, we deal with 3 types of emissions, what we call as Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3, using the GHG protocol language. Essentially, most of the emissions related to any automotive sector is associated with tailpipe emissions. And the tailpipe emissions contribute to nearly 95+ percentage of all emissions that any auto company generates. Over the last several months and years, auto companies have been finding out ways and means of reducing and improving on their fuel economy, either because of regulatory pressures or simply because the customer demands more for less as far as mileage is concerned with reference to fuel consumption. As all of us know, one of the biggest sources of foreign exchange reserves that we park today in the country is basically on purchase of fuel and fuel-related services from different parts of the world. As we are getting into different sorts of economies which are based either on nature-based fuels that can probably replace fossil fuels, we recognize that these are only going to end up with partial solutions. So as companies, corporations, governments are moving to the net zero scenario, our company is also thinking very seriously in 3 specific areas. One is, what is it that we can do to reduce tailpipe emissions by improving efficiency of our products, more importantly, better utilization, and also ensuring that we are constantly evolving technologically to make this transition towards net zero of our products possible. But as all of us know, the diesel and gasoline are inherently, they have their polluting characteristics. So despite all our modeling and all the work that we would be able to do to improve IC engines, we're pretty sure now that the transition, unless we move away from these fossil fuels, the contribution of scope 3 emissions, that is tailpipe emissions, is going to be extremely limited. So the transition to an electric vehicle scenario or a hydrogen economy is not an option for us anymore. And we are working very closely with Mr. Sinha's team and with the rest of the companies inside the group to transit from fossil fuel-based scenarios to products which are going to be based on new technologies that would make things carbon neutral, and we move towards net zero. We are also seeing what is it that we can do, and we have been doing series of steps to ensure that the entire fleet that we have transits to the new technology in time to come. All of us would probably know that we, in the commercial vehicle space, we are more than 60% of our market share is in the sale of diesel vehicles. And therefore, this transformation requires huge amount of effort. And we have kicked off this journey to ensure that we are probably leaders in this space, and we would probably lead the agenda on climate change in a very big way. That said, I told you about tailpipe emissions, whether it is passenger cars or commercial vehicles. But the big thing also is that we are converting all our plants, whether it is the commercial vehicle plants or the plants which are associated with passenger cars, to move towards scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, which is for the, in the running of our plants, and also from the generation of electricity, which we buy, to sources which are greener. So we've got targets, and we hope that the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions would get completely carbon neutral in the next, before 2030. So these are our plans with reference to the climate risks. We also have got a lot of plans related to reuse, recyclability, and other things. But that finally is all about preserving Earth and preserving nature in a manner that we are actually holding things in trust rather than in ownership mode. So in the interest of time, I would probably stop here, Khosraji, and thank you very much for having us. And we're working very closely with Mr. Sinha's team to see, because we are mindful that while a large amount of carbon gets generated when we use fossil-based fuel for the electricity generation, renewable energy is something that will completely change the paradigm. And if you use renewable energy for driving electric vehicles, you're sure it's going to make a big difference. So on this positive note, I just want to comfort everybody on the call that industry and Tata Motors within the Tata Group are going to really lead the climate agenda in manners that you would be very happy that corporates are taking this initiative very, very seriously. And there is absolutely no denial. Rather, there's complete acceptance that we can make a very big difference. Thank you, Khosraji. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Arunji. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kutty. I know we have exceeded our time limit by miles. The only good part is that I didn't see any questions in the chat box. But I think just wanted to ask Ashok, I think you wanted somebody to share a few words before I hand over to Ranjit for summing it up, please. Ashok, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I just thought we would give a chance to anyone who might have had a few thoughts to share. We have run behind schedule, and I apologize for being such a poor manager of time. but you have a couple of minutes. If any of you would like to say a word, please just signify it by raising your hand or using the electronic hand. But before I hand over to Ranjit, I wanted to say thank you to my colleagues. Mr. Ram Durai, of course, is the president of the Club of Rome India, and General Sahni, who's the secretary, and Vishal and Surabhi, who've been terrific team members. But the person, of course, who's most important of all is the Secretary General in any of these things, and that is Ranjit Bhartakur. Ranjit is chairman of the Balipara Foundation. He is chairman of almost everything I can think of in sports and business and in the civil society areas. But he managed to find time for us tonight, and I'm going to let him have the last word. But before I do, I want to invite any of you who think that this is a useful kind of forum, that please stay in touch with us. We're trying to use the Club of Rome as a platform for delivering the kinds of messages that are needed in all sectors, to government, to businesses, to NGOs, to civil society, to academia, to media. And it is an important platform. It's a think tank which has credibility and is being heard. And I think we should use it. And we would be very happy if any of the people who were involved in this meeting would like to spend time with us and help us take these issues forward. This is not the last meeting. We will be having many more on subjects related to this. So I hope you will all join us in that endeavor.